What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're looking at the top decks of Unbroken Bond Standard Week 2. Today is Monday, May 27th. Usually I do these videos on a Friday and talk about the top decks for the upcoming weekend, but I wanted to try doing it looking back at the weekend and talking about the decks that way. Let me know if you have a preference for either one or if you like both of them just fine. So the four decks we're going to talk about this week are Reshizard, Weezing, Hoopastall, Registall, and Zapdos variants. So last week we had 6 or 7 decks on this list, I believe, and I said up we would be making the list more definitive and it would be shrinking as the weeks go on. Reshizard got first and second at Santa Clara Regionals. Weezing has been doing well at Cups and also had placings at Santa Clara 2 weekends ago. And then the same for Stall and Zapdos. So I'll get more into specifics as we go forward. We'll look at Reshizard first. This is Keon Amini's champion list from Santa Clara. He played the Greens variant, where you're using Greens Exploration to search for trainers, and you're not using any ability-based draw and search. So it's just the 4 Volcanion, the 2 Reshi, and 1 Eevee Snorlax. The Volcanion line, so the 4 Volcanion, it's really good versus one prizers. It makes your Zapdos match up better than the other Reshi variants. And it also gives you a non-GX to sit behind while you need to set up for a turn or two. And you can actually make your opponent go through 4 Volcanion and then 1 GX Pokemon, 1 tag team. Or you could do 2 Volcanion and 2 tag team, which is also really hard for your opponent to go through. It had the Stealthy Hood tech for Vileplume Stall matchup, and then just a lot of consistency cards. I thought the Lieutenant Surge's strategy was really cool, since we were looking at Lieutenant Surge's strategy for stall decks and control decks, but not really for other things. And since this deck wants to lead with Volcanion and go down on prizes first, since you're powering things up with Volk, Lieutenant Surge's makes a lot of sense here. So this is one of the Reshizard variants. I can't really say if I think one is better than the other, but I think this variant has a more even matchup spread. I think it really has the potential to be just about anything, but it is weaker to let loose and judge, since you set up your next turn with Green's Exploration and you want to keep those cards in your hand. So next is Alex Shemansky's second place list, the more turbo variant or the ability-based variant, since it has Jirachis, Marshadows, Lele's, and the Dene GX. They're all helping you see more cards. So no Greens exploration in this list. He ran a 1-1 Arcanine line for as his Vileplume tech, where Keon used the Stealthy Hood. And so pretty much the main difference here is Alex's list is using Pokemon to draw and search for cards, whereas Keon's was using Green's Exploration and a bit of a different supporter lineup with that Lieutenant Surge and the 1 Acerola. But this list has a lot more techs. It's more of a box type deck, since it has the 1-1 Arcanine, the Lugia, the Turtonator. It has the Mew for spread and Pikarom, and then 6 slots dedicated to Pokemon-based draw and search support. So this deck is a little easier to pick up and play, since you're just looking for that turn 1 Kiawe and the turn 2 Welder, and then just so on and so forth. Keep the fire energy acceleration up. Whereas the Greens engine makes the deck a little bit more skill based, because you can search your deck for any 2 trainer cards, and there's usually one optimal selection of 2 cards, and so the better players will usually reach that higher skill ceiling with the Greens engine. I definitely think both decks are top of tier 1 within the Reshizard archetype. So next is Weezing. We're going to look at my own second place list from Elite Cup this past weekend. I lost to Green's Reshizard in Top Cut in 3 games. So Green's Reshizard is actually much less favorable for Weezing than the Turbo or the ability-based Reshizard. That deck is actually very favorable for Weezing. But I think Weezing has a lot of free matchups right now in the meta, and it's very hard to tech for Weezing. You can tech a Field Blower, but just one most of the time isn't going to like win you the matchup on its own. Mew is actually very bad versus Weezing because Spell Tag can just bop it after 2 Detention Gas. Something like 2 Field Blower and a Lysander's Lab can maybe do the trick, or Acerola and Max Potions, a combination of a couple cards, but I don't think one card techs really work versus Weezing, which is why it's so strong. Nobody wants to dedicate multiple spots in their deck for a single matchup. And the deck is pretty versatile, so I'm only running the Larvitar and Frost Rotom as like backup attackers, really, because Frost Rotom hits the Fire Pokemon and Larvitar hits the Lightning Pokemon and Zoroark. But Weezing on its own just puts out so much damage. Like, it looks annoying, but it becomes obnoxious as the turns go on, and you just really take control of games, and there's you get into checkmate positions, which I really, really like. So I think this list is really optimal, and I can speak to that to a high degree since I've been playing it myself and it's my list. I can't really say about the Reshizard lists as much because I don't have nearly as much time with them as I do with Weezing. But I definitely think this list is a great place to start if you're interested in the archetype, and I think it's amazing for Cups and Madison regionals coming up next weekend. Next is Stall. This is Peter Kika's list from Santa Clara Regionals. I think this is the best Stall list I've seen. It's really, really good. I've been raving about it to everyone. The 2 DCE and the Rainbow Energy. I like the second DCE. I've seen a lot with just one, but it's nice to be able to attack with Steel Fist. With Lucario Melmetal, so you can just heal and tank, but you're also outputting 50 damage every turn. So if the game is dragging on, you will eventually win by knocking out Pokemon, taking 6 prizes. Oh, excuse me. So the Full Metal Wall GX attack plus the Metal Frying Pan is making incoming attacks do 60 less damage, and you can just chip away with 50 damage over time. I think it's really, really good. Hoopa and Regigigas can just take care of some matchups. Zoroark decks aren't usually that well built for Hoopa and Regigigas. You can usually just take care of them with that. Lugia GX can take care of the techs that you might see across the board, like Oranguru or Persian from Team Up. And then you have the Unknown Hand and the Girafarig. Unknown Hand is a win condition, and Girafarig is even a win condition versus some decks that really need things out of their discard pile. Like Malamar, per se, get the energy that they need to recycle out of there. And then the deck is just built really nicely with the 4 Stevens Resolve, 4 Pokegear, 3 Bills Analysis. So you want to see one of those 7 supporters, the 4 Stevens and 3 Bills on turn 1. But then you also have the 4 extra outs of Pokegear to potentially see one. So I also think the deck got more consistent with Unbroken Bonds, as well as just more oppressive because of how strong Lucario Melmetal is. And you can actually try to be taking prizes with this deck now too. So this is definitely my favorite Stall list that I've seen, and if you're looking for Stall, I suggest trying this one out. I don't personally like Vileplume right now, from Burning Shadows, which states its ability says as long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, your opponent's basic Pokemon cannot attack. But there's a lot of text for that. 1/1 lines of an evolution, or the Stealthy Hood, then Judge. So I just rather not dedicate spots to a 3/2 Vileplume line plus 2 rare candies, and then even if I get it out, my opponent might have a tech. I'd rather just go with this strategy where you can actually take some prizes in some matchups. But Vileplume is still a viable strategy. It's just I don't think it's the best way to do a build Stall at the moment. So last from my top 4 decks for week 2, we're going to look at Zapdos, and this is Michael Catron's Zapdos fighting list from Santa Clara. He placed 3rd, and Micah Morton also placed 4th with Zapdos with a similar build. So we have Zapdos fighting and we have Zapdos beasts. I covered Zapdos beasts in last week's week 1 video if you want to check that out. And there's also another Zapdos video around from recent weeks on the channel. But this is Katron's Zapdos fighting. So it just played 2 Buzzwole, Baby Buzz, and then a Marshadow Machamp GX, which is a really nice burst of fighting damage versus Pika-Rom and Zoroark. I don't think that Marshadow Machamp is one of the best techs, just because it doesn't help at all against Reshizard, it doesn't help against Weezing, it doesn't help against Stall, and I think those are the other 3 decks up here in the upper echelon of the meta right now. But Tapu Koko GX is very good versus Reshi, and Zapdos itself is good against Reshi. He also had the Stealthy Hood for Vileplume, like I mentioned. Just another reason that I don't think Vileplume is very good right now. People are actually acknowledging that Stall is a thing, and they don't want to lose to Vileplume outright. I do think this list is solid, but I'm not sure that Marshadow Machamp GX is the tech to go with. Potentially trying Rainbow Energy and Frost Rotom to make the Reshizard matchup a little better, but Marshadow Machamp is good if you're expecting Pika-Rom and Zoroark. I'm just not sure that I am. And the honorable mention we're going to go with this week is Blacephalon-GX. This is my current list. I got first at Elite Challenge with it this weekend, but it's just Elite Challenge. Don't take that too heavily. But I do think the list is very, very strong. It's one of my top choices for Cups at the moment. And Origins, if I go to that. I'm not going to Madison, unfortunately. But it gained a lot with Welder. I talked about this last week as well, but now I have my own solidified list. I'm playing 1 Heat Factory, 1 Lysander's Lab, 1 Ultra Space, and then 1 Field Blower. The Field Blower and Lysander's Lab is good versus Shedinja Stall, which we saw have 2 top 8 spots last week. It's good versus Weezing. It's good versus any Pika-Rom variants that choose to run Choice Helmet. I've seen a couple of those. But yeah, Lysander Labs I think is just a hot tech right now. It's good against Weezing and Shedinja Stall, like I mentioned. And this list has become much more streamlined, at least my list. I'm not running the Alolan Muck and Alolan Grimer and Ditto anymore. And the Dene just gives you an insane burst of draw. If you're trying to like reach for the Welder and 2 Fire Energy, or even Welder 1 Fire Energy, or your B-Strings on B-String turn. But just the fact that Welder can allow Blacephalon to burst out damage on when B-String isn't live is really, really strong, and it can just blow through just about any kind of deck that sits in front of it. And so that's all I have for you guys this weekend. I hope you enjoyed the video, and be sure to let me know what you think about doing this on Monday, recapping the weekend and getting prepared for the upcoming week, as opposed to doing it on Fridays. I think this might work out a little bit better. I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.